Apple held its WWDC 2025 keynote, and it was filled with new technology. We're talking about the hot new stuff from Apple, including liquid glass, iPadOS windowing, live translations, and more on this episode of the Macworld Podcast. Welcome to the Macworld Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
Today's show is basically our reactions to the announcements at Apple's WWDC, which kicked off on Monday. There's a lot to talk about, but before we talk about the new features, I thought we'd get warmed up by doing a few laps around the track, so to speak. So what'd you guys think of the keynote overall?
I mean, I thought it was good. So a couple of things they had to do, and they delivered. They addressed the Siri thing in the most, simplistic Apple way ever, but they did at the top. So they did say like, hey, we didn't deliver what we needed, and it's coming soon.
They talked about how great all the existing features are,
right?
Like how, writing tools and stuff. And then the rest of it was just like, oh, we showed you it. Like we told you, it's going to take more time. It's like you told us that after you got busted running ads for something that doesn't exist and all. But yeah, they just kind of quickly glossed over that and moved on.
But they at least addressed it right up front. Like they didn't shove it at the end. They didn't ignore it. They said, hey, listen, this is what we delivered. This is what we didn't deliver. And this is what, we're still kind of working on. They still didn't really commit to a release. They said like that vague, like in the coming year stuff. Yeah.
They said we look forward to telling you more in the coming year, which could mean anything. Yeah. That could be everything from they managed to kick it out in iOS 26.2, or it could be an iOS 27 thing we hear about next year at WWDC. It's like it could be anywhere. We just know it's not something they're promising for this release, like for the 26 release. If anything, it'll be like an update in the spring or something like that. The best we can hope for, I should say, is to see more of a demo and a promise on a time frame at the September event where they announce new iPhones. That would sort of be the earliest that I think we could hope to get kind of a stake in the ground about when they're going to finally deliver.
It still could kind of coincide with this new HomePod with the screen thing that's supposed to come out at some point soon-ish. Right. So there was no hardware. But I thought that was good that they addressed that right away. And the other thing that they had to do was not make any empty promises, which they appear to not have done. I mean, it remains to be seen what comes and what doesn't. But based on what we got, it was a typical old school Apple keynote. This is all the cool stuff that's coming, and you're going to get it.
One of the things that the details that we look at as people who watch and write about this stuff every year is that there's always a number of things that kind of have a little asterisk by them. Yeah. And if you read the fine print on the site, it says coming later this year in an update. And that means that it's not going to be in iOS 18. It's going to be in iOS 18.2 or something, And I don't really see a lot of that. It seems like everything they talked about, it may not come in the initial release, but they're certainly not earmarking anything for this. But this is coming in a later thing, right? So it might be interesting that everything they talked about is coming in the first release, and they still have other cool stuff coming in a later release that they're just not willing to talk about and promise yet because they don't know it's going to be there.
Yeah. There was nothing kind of exciting. For sure. And that's what they kind of used to do. And then they started to overpromise. And iOS 18, it reached fever pitch of there's no way all this stuff is coming. It's impossible.
But even for several years before that, they'd show stuff at WWDC and clearly say it on the site, like in fine print, this is coming in an update later this year. And they would always hit that. They don't really appear to be doing that this year, which means that there may be really some cool stuff in iOS 26 and iPadOS 26 and all this stuff that's earmarked for 3 or something that they're just not going to talk about yet, which means that we might be in for some more cool stuff than what we saw.
Particularly with Apple Intelligence. I mean, there is Apple Intelligence stuff and quite a bit of it, but none of it is like this massive feature. It's all small little things, which is what we've talked about over the past year. The things that they do really well is what Apple Intelligence is kind of filled with in iOS 26.
Yeah. A great sort of example of what we might get is there were rumors that Apple's targeting a big update to the Health app along with the sort of AI fitness coach or health coach thing, and some other features and a new design for the app and all this other stuff. And that was always supposed to be part of the spring update, part of the .3 or .4 update, like in March or whatever. And they didn't even mention, that's the kind of thing in years past they would have mentioned and shown at WWDC and said, coming in an update later this year. And they did not do that. It was completely absent. It's not on the site. It's not anywhere. But we still very well may see that. It's just, they're going to announce it way when it's closer and they know that they're going to hit it.
What about just kind of the general keynote itself? I see a lot of reaction in social media that people kind of thought this was just kind of a ho-hum type of, nothing really jumped out except for maybe all the, I think I saw one person call it blatant advertising for F1.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they redesigned every single operating system. They completely overhauled the iPad. I mean, I was pretty happy with what we got as far as announcements go.
I was talking with our editor, John, about this, about how since they started doing these pre-recorded things, outside of the skits, like the F1 thing at the intro or the song at the end, everything kind of has the same tone to it.
Sure.
Like everything is spoken with a voice cadence and excitement level and everything where it's the most important thing, just like throughout the entire keynote. And that really doesn't lend itself to any kind of big exciting moments. There's no crowd cheering or booing or being excited or clapping extra long about something. There's no like they're giving something where that's expected to be an applause line and there's no applause and it kind of falls flat. Like you just don't get any of that. It kind of makes them feel drab because like when everything's important, nothing's important. It just kind of has that feeling to it. There's a lot of good announcements and stuff, but when there's no new hardware to announce, even just like a new Mac or anything like that, and it's all stuff, this is all things that have been rumored before, then I can see why the kind of people who really pay attention to WWDC were like, yeah, this was kind of lame.
I mean, Roman, you were there. Was there crowd reaction to certain spots?
There was. It is the drawback about the whole pre-recorded keynote now is that you don't get the audience reaction anymore when it used to be live, and there was plenty of that during the event itself. Tim Cook and Craig Federighi come out before the keynote broadcast live on the internet, live so to speak. It's not live; it's pre-recorded, but before it first plays on the internet, and so that gets the energy in the area. It's not a room; it's like it's a courtyard essentially. It's outside. It gets the energy up. People get hyped up. Craig does his thing. Tim Cook does his thing. So people get excited. So that kind of builds. And then they watch the video. So they get and then they see this, the F1 and, intro and everything. So they get even more excited. So there is more excitement in the room. But yeah, when you're watching a stream, you don't get any of that anymore. So I think ever since they've done the pre-recorded keynote, people have been saying, yeah, this keynote it's been kind of boring, and that's been said ever since they've gone to this format.
Especially when there's not something that didn't leak.
Yeah.
Right, when there's not some new feature or something like that the people who pay attention to WWDC keynotes and read Apple sites and comment online, they're dialed in, so they know what to expect, sort of.
And that's the other thing that I find interesting watching it with all these other people. Most of these people are developers. Because I sit in the media section, and the media section is usually dead. We're media people. We can't react. We're not supposed to react at all. We're supposed to be unbiased, but everyone else reacts. And when there's a huge reaction to a long-rumored feature, like, for instance, liquid glass, which we'll get to in a second, that's been reported for I don't know how long now. So to us, it's almost kind of like, oh, yeah, they did that. They officially did that.
They did the thing.
Yeah. But it gets a huge response live. Which makes me think, did you guys really not pay attention?
They do have plans.
They do have plans.
To hype up the things they want.
People, there are a lot of Apple people in the audience. But it makes me, but the reaction is loud enough to make me go, is this more of an approval or you didn't really know this was happening. It's hard.
Yeah.
You will never know. But
dude, outside of the announcement of liquid glass, which kind of they started with the iOS, they started that before and showed it on iOS, and then in the later sections they showed how it looks on iPad and Mac and stuff. But that got a big reaction live. What's the other one or two things that people really reacted to, good or bad, live at the at Apple Park? What got a big reaction?
Liquid glass got a big reaction. The iPadOS windowing got people very receptive to that. And I was kind of surprised at the very loud reactions to the Vision OS updates.
They were pretty good. I mean,
we'll
get into all this.
They are pretty good. I
texted Jason during this and said, like, this is what you've been asking for.
Yeah,
for a year.
Kind of. Yeah. It's like they're at least getting in the
they're getting
direction.
closer. Yeah.
I just didn't think, like you said, Jason, there were plants, but I also, I just didn't think there were that many Vision OS developers.
Yeah.
To make
I think it's so the way I saw it, and it doesn't affect me in the slightest because I don't have a Vision Pro, nor am I getting one. But when I watched it, I finally said, okay, like Apple's finally getting what this device is supposed to be. It's not Windows just floating around you. It's things in your environment. And when they showed the clock on the wall, the calendar on the wall, the little picture frame, like the landscape, like a window, like that really is like the wow moment that we've been waiting for with Vision Pro. And we're still a long way off, but it shows that Apple A is still developing for it because we weren't sure. B, that it's really understanding like what this item is and how it fits into the whole ecosystem.
I don't think they're going to slow down development at all, even though from a sales perspective, it's not going anywhere. Just because they've got future products that are going to run this OS and these features and these apps and stuff.
I was half kidding when I said that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying like they're going to launch whatever the next more affordable AR, VR, mixed reality thing is with basically 4 or 5 years of development like behind it. And that's going to make it a lot more palatable besides just the price and weight and whatever else they improve and do. Yeah, so I'm not surprised about the iPadOS thing. To me, that was the star of the show. Like the liquid glass thing, it's like I honestly have very mixed reactions about all this transparency. I think transparency in interfaces is generally bad. Like every time you see a sci-fi movie or one of these tech companies creating like our vision of the future, like sizzle reel things, and there's like somebody using some tablet or something and it's clear glass, or they're looking at like a piece of clear glass with like all of their computer stuff on it. I'm like, that's the worst experience ever. You do not want to look through and at something at the same time. And now all my icons and stuff are like that. I just think that's bad. But other parts of liquid glass, besides the transparency thing, were good. But the iPad stuff, it's killer.
Well, let's not jump from liquid glass yet. So when I was looking at it, both in the keynote and people sharing, I haven't downloaded it yet because I only have one phone and I'm not going to kill it with the beta right now.
Developer beta 1 is not the time to jump it.
Right.
It's a little wonky as expected. Yes.
Yeah. But so it seems as though Apple is kind of preparing us for a world similar to what Jason just described, where we're looking through things. I mean, the obvious one you comes to is glasses. And if these Apple glasses are in development, that's kind of how things are going to be. Layers on top of layers, and you have to refocus your eyes and train them and stuff. And I'm not saying that Apple is like, doing this on purpose to show us how, like wonky that vision will be. But I think that this is, when we heard the rumors about this, they said this is like a 10-year plan, much like iOS 7. iOS 7 was a little bit different in the sense that the devices that were coming out were, like the iPad, and it went to that.
Yeah.
Like liquid glass is for stuff that we don't have yet.
Right. But that doesn't mean it's good for the things we have.
No, I agree. And I think there's going to be a lot of tweaks during the beta, and there are some visual issues with it, and they got to make some changes. But I understand why in this initial form, it's like, whoa, like what are we, like why are they doing all these weird layers and stuff, and like the way the words go around the glass and stuff, like it's just kind of trying to mimic all that stuff that's that's coming down the pipe in 2 or 3 years, 5 years, whatever.
It makes sense in Vision Pro to have all this transparency in your interface, because as you wear it and walk around, you have to literally see your environment around you. You don't want to obscure. You have to see through it. You have to see through.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Because
glasses,
otherwise, you're looking at nothing. Right. Otherwise, you're closed off, and you're not in AR anymore. You're in VR because all your everything icons are blocking all your view. But on any other screen, that doesn't really make sense. And what we've already seen is things like control centers a mess. Like it's all clear buttons.
They got it. They got to fix it.
And then notifications and stuff like that. Anything where it's clear, you ruin your ability to control the contrast of things. It's just variable based on whatever's behind it at the moment. And that's not a good UI thing. Like, whatever the users got behind it could ruin the contrast. It could be good contrast. You don't know. Like, that's not a great place to be. So I think there's going to be some tweaks based compared to like where it is, what it is now. But the other aspects of what they call liquid glass, the things that aren't just like, it looks like it's all glass and transparency, such as changing from toolbars with multiple things on it to little floating controllers, like controls that shrink away, and you tap them to get sort of a fly out menu, and then those little floating menus change based on like what view you're in an app and stuff. That's a pretty big win. That I feel like that's a good, like, overall, even if there was just no glass transparency effect, they could have done that. They could have done that with the old flat interface and stuff. But I think that's a big improvement in most of these apps on iPhone, because you've got very limited screen real estate. It takes that away. It puts the app back front and center. And as long as you're smart about what stuff you present to the user there, it's nice, and like, it's still the things you use the most that are there, right?
Yeah. And from a technical standpoint, it's gorgeous when it's right. When it's all muddy, it's hard to tell. But the way when you pull down the notification shade and like the icons go around like as if it's you're pulling down a pane of glass. It's pretty remarkable that they were able to achieve this.
They were doing this back on Windows Vista.
Well, I literally just going to say that. So I was just going to say, David wrote this morning that, it's liquid glass is kind of designed for like now, or maybe even 5 years ago, in the sense that, we've seen all this stuff. I don't think we've ever seen it quite this advanced, in the sense that it really looks like the way the words warp, the way things kind of go around the edges, the way there's reflections and refractions and stuff. It's not just pulling it down and seeing like blur behind it. Like, it really looks like it's a piece of glass going. They showed that WWDC thing a million times where they're like holding the thing over the words to try to get how things. It's like, it looks like that in a lot of spots. Unfortunately, because it's a digital material, as they call it, it also looks wonky at times, and it doesn't always work because it's not real life. But it's very impressive when it does.
And I'll go out there and say, like, even when it does work, I question whether it's a good idea.
I don't disagree.
Like it's like they can, even when they nail it, you look at it and you go like, ooh, that's neat.
Right.
But as soon as the ooh, that's neat wears off, you're like, I have a hard time reading this. Like, it was much easier to see these icons and read this text and see what my notification says at a glance before. I could like see through it like glass.
Like, Apple's almost training our eyes with that stuff for glasses.
Yeah, it's bad though. I don't need to get used to looking at low contrast notifications. It's not a good thing.
During a media briefing that I was part of, they said that you should be able to adjust the transparency and opacity of the elements because it's an accessibility issue.
There is one accessibility thing it's in accessibility settings, people found a toggle that says reduce transparency. You don't get to there's no sliders, there's no control. There's just one toggle that says reduce transparency. It does improve things a lot. It looks a lot less like, ooh, look at the glass and the warping text and stuff. It's like very frosted glass. But everyone who is using this Dev Beta 1, but everyone who's using it is toggling that on and going, oh, that's better.
Yeah, I think they'll strike a balance between that and the full liquid glass experience when this is all done.
So what else? So
they fixed photos. Hey, everybody who complains about photos, and we have all that stuff about like the photos, telling people how to make the photos app more like the old photos. Now they just basically made it 2 pages. The first page is just all your shots. So it's your big list of shots, just like you used to have before iOS 18 that everybody likes. And then another page, and that's all your categories and stuff. And that pretty well fixes it for people. I think everyone's going to be real happy about that.
I never quite understood why people were upset because your photos were still there. You just had to scroll a different direction to find them. But I get it.
It's still,
it doesn't. It's a good option to have. If all you want to do is just see your photos, forget about all the folders and stuff. They're there.
And plus, it just kind of forced all these categories and folders on you. It'll like, what are all these? What are all these things? Like, I don't need to. I just scroll through my big list of photos. Well, now that's kind of the default, and then you can tab over to all your categories and stuff. So there's that. The camera. I don't know how people are going to react to that. The camera's been changed a lot. Much simplified. There's basically 2 buttons on the bottom, just like photo, video, and you drag it. It gives little hints. The interface expands a little to show you there are words to either side, so you can drag over to like panorama, slow-mo, all the other things. So they're there, but the interface just shows like photo, video, the shutter, a couple of quick controls, and then everything else is like hidden behind a menu.
I'm going to assume that more than 80% of iPhone users, I'm going to include myself in that 80%. That's all they want.
Yeah, and all the other stuff is still there. It's just as easily accessible. It's just not quite as visible. And they made
as
more
long as you
things.
can still pinch to zoom. I think that's all that really people got to.
Yeah,
really
the zoom
about.
Stuff and the little radial dial like zoom thing is still in there. The little buttons to like 1x, 2x, 5x. This 0.5, 1.5. That's all there. And they added things that pro users wanted, or like the enthusiasts wanted, which is like, why can't I change my format from the app? You had very limited options for like format changes. Now you can tap the little format thing, you get a flyout menu, and you get all the available file types and resolutions and everything for your videos and your photo, whatever mode you're in. And that's pretty great. People have been asking for that for a long time. I think enthusiasts might balk at first about having less stuff visible right up front. Right. But a lot of stuff that you used to have to dive into settings for is just more right there available. So I think it's probably going to shake out being a good thing once people get used to it.
So what else from iOS stood out? What do you guys think of the phone app?
Oh yeah, that's really cool. I actually tried that out. We can't review the beta or anything, but like this, I think it's a good idea. It's put your favorites up top. Not favorite. Do they call them favorites? Yeah, favorites. Put your favorites up top, whatever you put a star to up top. It might be a good idea for them to suggest favorites. I don't think they do, but if there's one number you keep calling from your contacts or whatever, then maybe suggest a favorite, but they're just up top. And then the list below combines 3 tabs from the old phone interface. You can just jump back to the old interface if you want.
Right. That's the other thing. Like a lot of these things, like Apple is giving you options to keep the old way if you don't like it, which I think they learned from the past with that.
Yeah. Not camera. So they're going to make you use that new camera. So yeah, it combines favorites, voicemails, and calls tabs from the previous into one page. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And then, things like unknown numbers and stuff get filtered out, but they've always had the unknown callers. Same thing with the messages. There's like a separate menu for those if you want. You can get them out of your feed. But yeah, having all that in one place makes a lot of sense. You still got your dialer and your contacts right there at the bottom, one tap away, just like they used to be. It's pretty good. They didn't change the dialer significantly or anything.
I saw someone on Twitter or one of those places said or showed a video where if you're on a call and a new call comes in, I think the way to answer a call looked a little bit friendlier. Like there was another notification came in at the top while you were still on a call, rather than throwing up the hold and accept where you have to like wait and look. Like when you understand what they were doing, it wasn't confusing before, but it looked confusing when it all popped up in your face and you're like, wait, what do I do here?
And you're like, the hold and accept and the like
end and accept.
Let this call join me and all that looked too similar. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That would be good. I didn't try any of that. I did try the new feature. There's 2 new features in the phone that I think are awesome. One is the hold thing, which is it will detect hold music. Yeah, it'll detect hold music and give you the option to say like, just be on hold, and then it'll make it silent, and you can put your phone away or use it for something else. And then when an agent comes back, it tells the agent, hang on, I'm getting the person back for you. And it puts on the screen what the agent said. And then and it notifies you, and you can go like, they're there, and you can see what they said and choose to accept. And the other thing, which I did try out, is call screening. which is when you get a call from an unknown number, it doesn't ring your phone, but your phone answers. And then a voice that sounds kind of like Siri tells the person, it says, please leave your name and the reason for calling, and I'll see if your caller's available. And then whatever they say pops up on your screen, just like live voicemail used to, right? And then it rings with that on your screen so you can see what is this person and then choose to accept or decline. And that's only unknown numbers, so it's not like that's going to start happening to all your friends and stuff. So,
and that'll usually be like a 3-second pause and then hello, because those are like phone bank people and they have 30 different phones at once, and as soon as someone picks up,
and then I know not to accept it.
Not to pick up, right?
Right. Whereas somebody else is going to hear a voice say, please leave your name and the reason for calling, and I'll see if your person's available. And they'll go, oh, it's DoorDash. I'm here with your chicken wings. That's right. And you're like, okay.
The other call feature I like, it's a CarPlay feature, but it no longer takes over your whole screen when a call comes in. If you're on Maps or something, I hated that. Like if you're like, oh, my turn's in 30 feet, and then someone calls and it's like, uh-oh, like I don't know where I'm going now.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going. And you're looking at big, and it wasn't a useful call interface. No. Like it's a lot of empty space. So
this
that's
is much better. It gives you a little banner like it does on your iPhone.
Yeah, sort of a live activity kind of a thing.
They gave us a demo of using live translations during a phone call.
That looks pretty cool. I don't know how useful it's going to be for me, but it looks very cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever use it, but it looks pretty cool.
The other person doesn't need an iPhone if you're on a call.
Yeah, it runs on device. Right. On your iPhone, and it basically say if they're speaking Spanish, you say something in English, you'll say your English thing, and then a AI voice will say what you said in Spanish to them, and then when they say something in Spanish to you, then an AI voice will say it in English to you, and that all happens on your iPhone. And not in the cloud or anything like that. So they're not listening to your phone calls or whatever, So that's pretty slick. I don't know how well it'll work, but I think it only has to work well enough for you to get the important stuff.
Right.
Right. And like a bunch of these features have been available in other forms before, but it's, it brings it to the phone level. And Apple doesn't have a habit, with the exception of Apple Intelligence. They generally don't release features like this unless they are rock solid and they work well. Like we've seen similar features on Android phones that are hit and miss. Google tried that duplex feature a couple of years ago that was like, it's pretty cool, but it doesn't really work all the time. Like I'm going to give Apple the benefit of the doubt here and assume that these features are going to work as well as they said they were.
Live translation in FaceTime works a little differently. It's not it doesn't wait for voice to translate. It just does captions, like live captions. While you're looking and talking to people. Again, this has been done, but it's all how well does it work? Right. And it runs on your device.
Is there anything else about the iPhone you guys want to point out? There's a ton of stuff.
Yeah, there's a ton. We don't need to dive into all the the Games app and everything else. We could be here all day. It's not really highlights at this point.
I like the lock screen changes. Like it's pretty slick. The way you can stretch the time and things dynamically adjust.
Yeah, there's a couple of beta wonkiness with that right now, but it's first developer beta. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Like all that stuff looks good when they're showing it to you, but you don't really spend a ton of time on the lock screen, but it's nice.
Do you guys care about spatial images?
You know what? Kind of.
You do? Okay.
I didn't until in this release in the beta, you're going through your photos. There's a little hexagon looking icon that they have that means like spatialize, like 3Dify this, right? That and that they use that icon when you are setting up your wallpaper and stuff like that. But it's also in your photos. You're just scrolling through, you see a photo and you hit that button and then it spatializes it so that as you move your phone, it gives you a 3D effect. It's kind of cool in a lot of photos. Like it doesn't work all the.
And you have Vision Pro, so it's even cooler for.
Yeah, it's taken from that because that's what the Photos app in Vision Pro, when you're looking through photos, could kind of do that. Like that was the point, was that you could take spatial photos, but they added a feature where it would spatialize like a photo. Now it does it for everything, and it just uses as you tilt your phone, it gives you that 3D effect. It's kind of neat. Like I was messing with it last night going this is not as dumb as I thought. This is kind of cool.
Because the lock screen now supports spatial images.
Yeah.
And when I looked at it, I was kind of like, okay, this is cool. And then that thought immediately left me. And I thought,
it's a toy.
Okay.
It's totally a toy,
Yeah.
but it's neat. It is kind of cool. Certain photos work really well with it. And you just as you naturally kind of move your phone around, you see that kind of relief and that sort of 3D parallax effect. And you're like, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, there is something cool. The novelty of this idea that this flat screen has depth to it.
Yeah, really.
I mean, that's the whole. That was if there was a theme of WWDC, that was it. Is that it's not just a rectangle that has glass. It's like there's all this stuff coming.
So
in
it's the lock screen, but also just your Photos app will do that now, and it will spatialize existing photos. I don't know if the photos needed to be taken with an iPhone that has LiDAR or anything like that, or if it'll just take. I haven't tried it with like a DSLR photo just to see if it uses AI on a flat image to kind of guess. I don't know, but it's kind of a neat. It's a toy, but it's a neat toy. I like it.
Let's jump back to iPadOS and talk about the windowing thing.
This was the star of the show. iPadOS was the star of the show.
Yeah, they saved it. They saved it for the end. Like you were waiting for it. They knew. Even Craig Federighi made like a little joke about it. Like, could you imagine we did all this stuff? Like they knew like this is the thing that everyone has been asking for like a decade, and they did as good of a job with it as I could have expected them to. Where it's still an iPad. They didn't fundamentally change how it works unless you wanted to. And that's exactly what you want if you're an iPad, because there's a lot of iPad users like me. I bring up my son all the time. He's never going to use windowing. He wants everything full screen. And that's the way he uses his iPad. And there's a lot of people who want that. They don't use split screen. They don't use slide over. They don't use Stage Manager. But there are a bunch of people who do and who want that multitasking. And Apple really delivered it in what looks to be a great way.
Yeah. And your son, you say that about your son now, but wait until he's got messages on one half and a Twitch stream on the other, tiled, and then he'll never do anything else. Like
that's probably true. Once he sees it in action, he might change. Yeah.
Yeah, but they totally nailed it. First of all, it supports more iPads. Like the windowing system supports more iPads than before. It brings Stage Manager to older iPads that didn't support Stage Manager before. Like it's a whole new under the hood system that that we were worried would have higher system requirements. It has lower system requirements.
Right.
And it lets you use more apps at once than you used to be able to. And then the other thing is like they're not freely resizable like on a Mac, like any size. It looks like there's a few different set dimensions for everything, but there's several, and you can kind of put them all over. They can overlap. Right. They can be half off the screen, and then there's just some obvious gestures for tiling, like fling it to the side to like half screen it. They got rid of the old split view and slide over because they don't make sense.
Redundant.
They're redundant to this. And then they just did a lot of things that make sense, like the swipe up to push them out, but you still see them on the edges of the screen, so you can choose a new app from your home screen. And then they come back in. A real pointer when you're hooked up to a trackpad, like menu bar, like big boy stuff, like a menu bar.
But the menu bar that's invisible unless you need it to be. Window bars that are invisible until you want them. The menus that appear. Like they didn't take away the iPad-ness of it. They just added all this cool functionality if you want it. It looks to be really sharp and really smart. I gotta download it at some point. That one I do have a spare iPad, so I'm gonna try that.
It's one of those things that's my iPad kind of collects dust unless I need to use it for something, because now that phones are kind of bigger, it's not the consumption device I used to need. Like iPhones used to be too small, and I'd be like, if I'm gonna read something, I use my iPad or something.
Yeah,
and I just don't feel like that anymore. So this really brings it into that realm of like I could use this more like my Mac.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have the equivalent of multiple virtual desktops that the Mac has. They don't call them virtual desktops. They call them what do they call them, Roman?
Spaces.
Yeah, I don't know if they have the equivalent of Spaces. Like I can have multiple full screen apps and just left, right, swipe. I mean, that is how iPhones already work, is you can just swipe between them, but it kind of freezes apps when you do that. So I don't know, but the background tasks API, so like. That was the other killer thing about the iPad, is like it has all this power and you can do all this stuff. It's like, but if anything takes a minute, you have to sit there on the app while it takes a minute to do that. And now you could just go do something else and it'll do it and like get a little live activity. So great.
Yeah, Roman wrote, it's the closest thing to a touchscreen Mac, and that we're probably ever going to get.
Yeah, probably.
And, we can argue it should have come out 5 years ago. You can argue that maybe it should be a pro feature, and on the iPad mini, it's ridiculous, but I'm not going to argue that they brought it to more tablets than they thought they were.
I mean, the idea that you can get it, that it'll work on the cheap iPad.
Yeah, right.
The just the iPad that's always like
$300, $350.
It doesn't change. Like that's awesome. It's so killer
for sure.
They brought Journal to iPad, which it feels like it kind of should have started there.
Yeah,
like it never. Like I understand why it was on your iPhone because so much of it is kind of this AI powered. Like where did you go? We're gonna look at your locations and stuff. But journaling feels like something you do on a bigger page with a pencil.
During the Apple briefing I was in, somebody asked if there was going to be a window limit, how many you could open on the iPad. And I was surprised at the answer because the answer wasn't, they didn't give an answer essentially, which kind of means they haven't ruled it out yet. And it's possible that they could implement a limit on like smaller iPads.
I think there's a limit and it might be variable depending on like how much RAM you use or something. But they did say in the keynote, you can have more apps open than ever before. So it means the limit's higher than it used to be.
Yeah.
Like in Stage Manager and stuff like that. Like there used to be a limit. Now there's a higher limit. But what is that limit? Maybe that depends on how much RAM do you have? How big of apps? Are they all calculator and stuff? Or are they like Final Cut? Like, so maybe the limit shifts and moves. And what happens when you hit it? What happens when you've opened too many things? How does it tell you, sorry, no more?
I'm sure someone will try it and post it on Twitter.
Well, that's the thing. 'Cause like I have the iPad mini. I was going to try and see it open how many windows I could open on the iPad mini.
Find out. You should try it.
So Mac's getting a lot of these changes. It's getting Journal as well. It's getting the liquid glass.
It's getting a phone app.
And it's like messages. It syncs with your iPhone, has your whole list, all your voicemails. You can, when a call comes in, you actually get like the image and stuff now, and not just like some generic notification that says like call incoming. You like get the picture and stuff. It's kind of cool. I actually look.
The one thing that stood out to me about the Mac section of the presentation is that Spotlight is now becoming a kind of main It's UI element. It's not just search anymore.
A bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
It feels like a feature that should have come out in like '97. Because
somebody said that it's like they've been watching Alfred or whatever.
It's not a novel concept or a new thing, and it's gonna I don't know how many existing Mac users are even gonna think to use it in that way because we've had it for so long. And we've used it like we're kind of set in our ways of how to use Spotlight. But I mean, it looks super powerful and slick.
For me, it's a quick app launcher, right?
Yeah,
like it's almost faster for me to launch an app if I'm typing by hitting Command Space, a first letter or two, and then Enter, than it is to like move it to the trackpad and slide down to my dock or whatever. Like it's faster, and that still works, but it's a full search of like everything just
and
chronologically
and stuff. Like it can do a lot.
And it's all chronological, and then you can sort them by category of like what it found. But then there's also, you can just, when you move your mouse to the search bar before you type anything, the spotlight bar or whatever, you get these different categories, like you get apps and clipboard history and all this. Like clipboard history, yes. Like I don't think this quite replaces clipboard managers, but there's, for a lot of people who don't have a clipboard manager, they're going to discover what's so great about clipboard managers. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, something I copied 10 times ago and it's gone now from my clipboard. It's really there. I can go grab it. It's awesome. I wonder how many Mac users are just too stuck in their ways, or they're going to go like, oh, this is a cool new thing that saves me a bunch of time.
I mean, it's going to require some, like, you're going to have to think to use it. The clipboard history is one thing. They didn't even really mention that. That just happened to appear in the slide. So they showed, like, they were using, I think it was Photoshop, and they used Spotlight to like bring up a tool. It's like, I would never think to do that. Like, it's not something that I'm trained to do. So I think it's very powerful. I'm very interested to see how, like Stage Manager, like how people are going to integrate it into their existing workflows. But maybe it's more for new users. Maybe they're targeting, new to Mac users.
They showed the clipboard history when they were like demoing, like making a document, like how I can pull in an image and then do a quick action, like remove the background from it and stuff. So, those things are there. I think there's a lot of potential in the thing where you can trigger actions. Like you can say, like sending a message, like you can send a message to this person and then it'll prompt you what the message should be, like on my way home or something. Yeah. And then you can actually give that a keyboard, like quick shortcut, like OMW. So that when you open Spotlight and just type OMW, that exact action will pop up and you can just hit enter. And now I've saved opening messages, typing my response, doing all the, like I've saved like 10 steps with just typing quick things on my keyboard.
But like Automator.
That works in a bunch of apps. It's so cool. Am I going to ever do that? I don't know. It's so cool though.
Right. Apple Script, Automator, like shortcuts, like these things exist that people don't use because they're just too new or too complicated. This looks very simple. I think this is a lot simpler than shortcuts.
For sure. I think it'll have more users than shortcuts. There's a lot of graphical elements where it's like message to who, and it's like a box you click on and choose someone. You don't feel like you're scripting, you feel like you're just choosing a couple of options. So I'm anxious to see all what's available, how flexible it is, and how easy it is. And then just do I work it into my workflow? Because there are plenty of times when there's like every day where I do like the same 5 things on repeat. And if I can just get a keyboard shortcut.
Clipboard history was kind of just a quick mention during the presentation. I asked him for a little bit more detail and didn't get much, which made it feel like it's possible that it's still kind of like really in development. Well, the only one key detail I got is that clipboard history maintains an 8-hour history. And then I asked a bunch of other questions and got a lot of, we'll have to get back to you on that.
I don't use those apps. Is that common for like clipboard apps, or does it stay forever?
Most of them are configurable. Like you get to say how long do you want to save history for, number of items, and or length of time.
8 hours seems like more than enough to use something that you copied. Like,
sometimes you're looking for that thing you copied yesterday. Yeah,
I guess.
Like you get up in the morning and you're like, oh, I was just on that page yesterday and I copied it, so maybe. And then there's some other clipboard managers have certain features, privacy features. Like as soon as you've used a clipboard, it erases it. Like it keeps it in your clipboard history, but as soon as you use one, it deletes it. Like that could be like as an option if you're just paranoid about things. And I don't see any of that kind of stuff there. But like you said, Roman, it's really new.
TVOS got some good time during the keynote too.
I mean, a lot of it was just a trailer for the new stuff coming out.
TV, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on. It doesn't seem like there's a lot going on there other than they made the interface elements look classy.
The new interface,
and it's going to have the games app, like which everything has.
Roman, you should get an Apple TV.
I don't see this.
It's
you should.
It's
What's up?
Easily like one of the best unsung Apple devices they have. Like
the new Apple TV 4K, the second gen one. Yeah. They actually lowered the price, so it's like the best. It's also the best deal. Yeah. When it came out, it was cheaper than the previous one. It was just and better. Like I
have a Samsung, one of those M8 monitors, and I have a Amazon Fire Stick that I use all 3 regularly. And I'm so happy when I sit in front of the living room TV and I'm with Apple TV. Like it's so much better.
Yeah. Every smart TV interface I've used has been slow, kludgy. Just a mishmash of different interface things depending on who's in control right now, the app or the thing and stuff. It's
for sure.
I just used the built-in software on my TV, and
shame on you.
It's not good.
Treat yourself to an Apple TV. Come on.
The one exception.
I'll get you a $100 stipend.
You'll let me expense it.
Plus, you can do things like FaceTime from your living room.
Then I have to set up a camera. I have to set up my iPhone.
No, it's your iPhone. You just hold it.
It's continuity camera. You just put lean your iPhone up over there by your.
A little thing pops
TV.
up on the screen. It's easy.
I should do that. So I'm just lazy.
It's literally like 1,000,000 times better than anything you've ever used.
I'm just lazy and don't like to spend money. That's the thing.
Well.
Oh, Apple Watch. I almost forgot Apple Watch. Are you guys excited about Workout Buddy?
I mean, no. I see the value of it. Like, I understand that some people will probably use it. I'm not a workout guy. I do work out a couple times a week. I don't need encouragement. I don't need stats and things. Like, I don't care. But like, it seems good. I'm surprised it's not part of Fitness Plus and it's free. That's what impressed me the most. That's the kind of feature I would have thought they would have tied to the subscription.
Yeah. I think it's because it's a voice thing coming from on-device model. Like, it's an on-device voice thing. The voice is like trained from one of their Fitness Plus coaches, but it's meant for you to be able to go running with your AirPods and your Apple Watch and have it say stuff and everything. And that is not me. And when I do work out, I'm doing weightlifting, which is not even part of this thing at all. And then when I do cardio, I'm on like the exercise bike, and I don't need it to like be like, just push harder, you're almost there and stuff. I do not need it. I'm trying to ignore the fact that I'm on a bike. I've usually got some like mobile game open on my phone so I can sit there and pretend I'm not working out. Yeah. So I really don't want it to be doing that. I need to hear from the kind of fitness enthusiast like a runner or somebody whether they like this, because it is not for me.
So I don't want to sound culturally insensitive, but when you're at the keynote, there's this perception of what Apple users are, and it's largely promoted by what Apple is. You are inundated with that when you're there. Those people really do exist.
Oh, right.
You tend to think that because their commercials in general, are like an exaggerated reality, so to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you go to an Apple keynote, you are neck deep in that culture. There are a lot of people who look like that. And I don't mean that disparagingly. Yeah. I'm just saying, if you ever see an Apple ad and go, I don't understand that, there's a reality to it. So
yeah.
And so it seems, so I guess my point is, there was a lot of enthusiasm about Workout Buddy. So these people, every time I say these people, I make it sound like no. It's that.
We'll run a disclaimer at the end of this room, and your thoughts do not represent Macworld.
I don't.
You're just saying we're couch potatoes. We're not those
I'm
people.
the most couch potato out of all of us. So
right. So I mean, I get what you're saying. You're saying like there's a representation of Apple users in their marketing and ads is like this culturally diverse mix of like sort of artistic upper middle class people for whom apples are an invisible part of their partner in their life. Right. It's like their thing. And it's like there are people like that. They come out at when you're at Apple Park, that's where the people are at.
Yeah, because I was in a demo for Workout Buddy, and the people I was with, and they were super excited about it. They were super excited, and I was sitting there going, I would hate this.
I know.
That's never been my kind of thing. Just like, I don't want to get in trouble. That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm already writing up an HR email. It's okay.
So I guess it's going to be popular with a large segment of Apple users.
I mean, the Fitbit used to have a service. I think it was $10 a month. That was very, very similar to this. People seem to respond to it. I mean, now Google bought them, and I think it's gone now. But yeah, people do like this stuff. People do like, so I think, I don't know if it'll be super popular, but I think people will use it. And again, it's free. So if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. And
it's out of your way if you don't need it.
Yeah,
something
so
like this.
I think ultimately it's good.
There was something like this that I actually did used to like, except that I can't really run anymore because my knees are bad. But like, there was an iPhone app, and you had to run with your iPhone because this was before Apple Watch and all that stuff, called Zombies Run. And it was a game where you're part of a group surviving a, zombie outbreak and stuff, and you're holed up in some school or something like that. And you're a runner who has to go out running and finding supplies. And as you run, you play music and stuff, but the voice would say in your ear that you found some item, or whatever, just based on the distance you run. And then every now and then you'd hear zombies gaining on you, and you had to run faster so the zombies wouldn't catch you. And it was very, very effective, but also it gamified your running experience. Like you had a reason to run more because you got more supplies for after you got back after your run to like build up your base and stuff like that. And there were like story elements. Like every few minutes you'd hear basically a radio drama of a story of they found a new person. What's that helicopter overhead? Like there were characters and a story and everything. I'm sure that app still is around. It's probably been updated a bunch of times since then, but that's the kind of thing that would get me to exercise more. Not a fitness coach saying push, or whatever, but like a fun gamified thing where I'm running from zombies and collecting supplies.
Like, I'm looking at it. There's a whole, it's the ZRX company. They have a Marvel tie-in, so it does still exist.
Oh, yeah, they've probably...
And Zombies Run also exists by itself.
Yeah, there were years ago, so they've probably got new apps and additional things and stuff. And if you're interested, if you're like, I hate running, but I should be running, those are like the kind of things that really kind of get you to run, because they really gamify your run, and they're interesting. They take your mind off of it because you're running and it's about running, but you hear this little radio drama playing and then your music comes back in, and then it's cool.
Oh, in March, a bunch of staff got laid off, but the company says they're still existing.
Right here when I gave them a free plug.
They're not making new episodes right at the moment.
Yeah.
Alas.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this up about WWDC? Anything that maybe you think we should mention, or any last impressions that you guys have?
It's funny, my parents are like my gauge in my life. So Monday night, my mom calls and she said, is there anything, because she knew that I had a busy day. She didn't know what WWDC was, but she just knew that like Apple was going to announce stuff. And she's like, is there anything that I care about? And I said, the biggest thing you're going to notice is that the phone is going to look different once you install, this new operating system. And the first thing she said was, will I still be able to keep my icons on my home screen? So I thought to myself, like, yeah, of course, Apple's never going to take that away. But people don't want things like this to change. And I think that liquid glass and all the interface stuff, I think Apple was smart not to change things too drastically, but drastically enough where it'll look different. It'll behave slightly different, but ultimately it's the same iPhone as before. And people criticize Apple for that. But there's like 1 billion users. They can't go and just change things. So that's why there's all these customization options where if you want to change, you can, but you don't have to. Like they're in this place now where they have so many users and the iPhone is so popular and they're so dependent on selling new ones every year that any real changes has to be built on top of what was existing. And I think that's kind of the problem they got into with Apple Intelligence, is that they can't just upend Siri. If it doesn't work, that's a major problem. Gemini cannot work. A Samsung's thing cannot work like that. Like that's fine. But Siri and all these things have to work. They have to be rock solid. And I think iOS 26 is a start of changing things gradually over the next, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, could be. I was interested in, first, the glass stuff looks great in the demo. And then in real life, you're like, transparency is bad. But the design changes they made are winners, and I think people are going to be really happy the first time they open photos and it's just all their photos, and they got to tap a button to go to all those categories. Like that's the dumbest thing. They're going to love it. The thing that struck me the most, and it took a minute to digest this, was this is the first time in years, at least 3 or 4 years, that they didn't show at WWDC a coming later thing, other than the idea that this is all coming in the fall. There really wasn't anything with an asterisk by it that says coming in an update later. So I think there are even more things in iOS 26 that are coming in an update later, and they just didn't want to do that at WWDC this year. So there's more to it.
It also speaks to the name change, which we didn't even talk about in the podcast, that it's not a version 19, it's a 26, which is an annual thing, a yearly thing. Right. Like we're going to get it over the course of several
I wonder,
months.
They didn't say anything about this, and we won't know yet, but is it going to be iOS 26.1, iOS 26.2? Right. Or is it just going to be...
Maybe it's just iOS 26 and this is the latest version of it,
Yeah, and there's updates, and they'll have the version number strings, but they're not going to promote them as you download them as 26.2.
Because people don't know. Like, I know I'm running iOS 18.5. My parents have no idea. No clue.
Exactly. It's not clear.
In fact, a friend of mine called me up last week. He upgraded from an iPhone 11 to an iPhone 16e like a month ago.
Yeah.
He was asking me all these questions about this. I finally said to him, like, when was the last time you updated your phone? Because he was asking me things for, like, got updated in like iOS like 16. He's like, oh, I never updated. I just hit the later button. So like people aren't even like not only do they not know what version they are, they don't even know what version they're on. So if a thing comes up and just says iOS 26 something and not the 0.1, maybe people would be more likely to keep it updated.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 938. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
Thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, on YouTube at the Macworld Podcast channel, or through any other podcast app. Do you have any comments or questions? Contact us through Blue Sky, Facebook, or Threads. Just search for Macworld and look for the blue mouse logo. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.